Companies say a culture fit, most of the time that really means they want to hire somebody who acts, looks, works, and otherwise behaves like them. And so it kind of keeps this status quo. When we have organizations that are relatively heterogeneous and based on our demographics in the United States, which is quickly changing, that's usually white males or white women or a majority of a white led and run organization, right? And so when organizations say we're looking for a cultural fit, sometimes it's well-meaning, but most of the time it ends up excluding marginalized groups. Most organizations who are really trying to do good work in the DE&I space will talk about culture add. And that's done by really proactively defining what your culture is outside of maybe stereotypical sentiments of white supremacy or the patriarchy, sexism, whatever you want to call it, right? But there are things that are ingrained within our psyche as a society, right? Organizations that are trying to shift that set a organizational culture that's not based on those things, but rather, talks about the type of environment that they want to have, such as being inclusive, talks about being maybe a productive environment, good collaborators, whatever that looks like. Look totally different from one organization to another. And they're not necessarily looking at that from a framework of the fit, but rather what people might bring based on their unique perspectives into that group. The other part that this commenter mentioned was really this performative DE&I initiatives in order to bring individuals who are underrepresented, like they said, hire 2 women, 1 Latina and 1 who was Muslim. But at the end of the day, those individuals weren't really welcome. They weren't included. They didn't belong. And that's because most of that work ends up being performative in order to fill a quota or to meet a DE&I initiative metrics wise. But we find that the churn for underrepresented or marginalized groups continues to be high. So if you are a job seeker and you want to avoid that, here are a couple of things that you want to do. When you are interviewing and evaluating a potential employer, you really want to ask some poignant questions. One of those are, can you tell me about the retention of marginalized or Black, Indigenous people of color, or a specific identity that resonates with you, right? Or is a part of your identity. To ask questions about what's the retention rate or how many individuals are hired or promoted. That can give you a really good sense. If they are transparent and they are able to really share about what that metric looks like, as well as a specific